your heart related
Mhm.
to that, but also your brain. So they're the priority areas. So what that means is when we dehydrate, the blood maintains its set point for quite some time
Mhm.
and then drops off only when you're massively dehydrated. So where it gets its fluid from is primarily the biggest water tank in the body, which is the skin.
Mhm.
So the skin is this water reservoir. It rips fluid from the skin and puts it into the blood and keeps the blood going as long as possible. So that means the skin is a dynamic system, but it's also a lead indicator. It's actually giving you a much better readout for hydration than what blood does.
Good. So, hello, Mark, and welcome to Impulse. I'm glad we can find a suitable time for the two of us to have this conversation. Sometimes it's not easy to manage time zones. As in this case, you are located in Brisbane, in Australia, and I'm sitting here in Zurich, Switzerland. So there's a couple of hours separating us. Before we start, I'd like to thank Rachel, who put us in touch and made this episode possible. She also made me aware of the pioneering work you've been doing, throughout your career as a biomedical engineer, and most recently, on devices that interact with our skin to deliver drugs or vaccines, but also to sense biomarkers and physiological parameters, like our hydration levels that we're going to talk about. So I find, the field of wearables very fascinating. We've had previous guests on the show pushing the boundaries of this space as well. I'm thinking about Mathieu Menanto from Withings. I'm thinking about Leo Grenstein from Lium on glucose measurement, and Esmeralda Megali from Exensio as well. So I'm looking forward to learning more about your activities with WearOptimo, the avenue it opens for the measurement of hydration levels, the underlying technology, and the applications it might have in our everyday life, in medicine, or in sports. But before we dive into it, and for those who might be hearing you for the first time, I will invite you, Mark, to present yourself.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be connecting in from you from Brisbane, Australia. Hi, yeah, my name is Mark Kendall. I'm a biomedical engineer, and I've been working within the field as a biomedical engineer for about 27 years now. By and large, I've been creating technologies for global healthcare that put things into the skin in terms of delivery, but also removing, or not removing, but reading signals from the skin as well. And quite often, that's replacing the needle and syringe at the same time.
When I was preparing the episode, so I looked at there's like, I will put the note in the description, the TED conference that you did, which was on the nanopatch, was this delivery mechanism that's pain-free. And also the interesting aspect is that it aims to deliver vaccines in a dry form and not
Yep.
liquid. And so you get rid of the cold chain problem. I think it's probably an interesting background to our conversation. So for those who want to have a look, I'll strongly recommend it. And when I was looking at the, information about what you're doing with WearOptimo, um, which focuses on, measuring hydration, I was thinking, it seems to be like it's an obvious, let's say, parameter of our body, and an important one, because it's about, the amount of water in our body. And yet it's very hard to measure, or like to self-assess. So,
Yes.
you have these apps where it tells you, hey, you should drink X amount of water every once an hour or whatever, but it never knows exactly how much water you have in your body. And it's really hard. And then I looked at, okay, what are the ways we can measure this? And one easy way is like you just measure your weight. One way is, I think, you measure like is it the transparency of urine or something, like
Yes.
very difficult methods to. And I think another thing is like osmolarity, like serum osmolarity, which requires a blood sample. So these
Yes.
are all like complicated methods. And I was a bit shocked that there's actually not any simple way to measure it. And so my first question was, where does your idea come from to measure this, and what is like the fundamental, let's say, challenge we have nowadays when it comes to hydration measurement that you're trying to address?
Yeah, it's a great insight that you've made. So hydration is a massive problem, and until recently, many people have not quite realized the scale of the problem. To give you a little bit of context, about half of humanity is mildly dehydrated, right? but for a long period of time. And it's been discovered by others. It's not from the work from my company, but by others, that that's putting the body under a deep form of stress, kind of like inflammation does as well. And it's leading to a reduction in people's life expectancy up to about 4 years or so, that long term stress. And so it affects everything we do. And it's interesting, we almost take water for granted because it's just a basic working unit for us. So we don't talk about oxygen as one example, but
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
oxygen.
Hmm.
We need oxygen to live, right? And our body does a pretty good job at doing, we'd have to think about breathing really. But we do need to think about taking water in, and water is a fundamental working unit as well. So it's so important. It's actually, there's some in the medical community are positioning hydration as being the next vital sign, right? So there's 5 vital signs right now. Is to be the next one. A lot of people are arguing for to be that. So that's kind of the scale of the problem. And we can talk about it in many different contexts, like surgery is one example. When you go into anesthesia, you
Yeah.
have a drop in blood pressure, and if you have a low case of the hydration levels, that causes such a degree of problems that it affects about 20% of all surgeries that take place. So it's a big deal. So yeah, your insight is very good that given that, the current approaches are very, very rudimentary. So uh, how heavy you are is imprecise. So much depends on whether you're needing to go to the toilet or not. All these things very difficult to measure. And then usually, when you think of diagnostics, blood draws are usually the gold standard. But in the case of hydration, even blood draws don't work very well.
Mhm.
And the reason why is the way the body dehydrates. And that's you asked about how we came into this insight for using microelectrodes to accessing the skin. So the starting point, and I'll talk about the limitations of the needle in a moment, but the starting point is deep domain knowledge with the skin. So I've been working with the skin for about 27 years now and studying the skin and being a student of the skin from many different points of view, whether it's the immune system, whether it's the mechanical properties of the skin, but also hydration. More than 20 years ago, I published a paper looking at the effects of hydration levels on the mechanical properties of the skin in the journal Investigative Dermatology. Now, I was doing it for entirely different reasons, but when I was creating WearOptimo and we're looking at what kind of things we might be able to read and how we might go about that with our microelectrodes, there's the blood-borne biomarkers, and yes, our sensor conceptually can be used for those. But there's something elegant about how hydration works in the skin, and the reason why is this. This is what we're tapping into. The reason why is when we dehydrate, we don't dehydrate uniformly through the body.
Hmm.
It's kind of like a lot of things in life. There's priority areas the body tries to keep right for as long as possible. Can you guess what the priority things the body tries to maintain as long as possible?
Is temperature?
No. Think about organs. Think about organs in the body or
Yeah.
working things.
Or it's like probably with blood or
Yeah.
yeah.
So blood, your heart, related
Mhm.
to that, but also your brain. So they're the priority areas. So what that means is when we dehydrate, the blood maintains its set point for quite some time
Mhm.
and then drops off only when you're massively dehydrated. So where it gets its fluid from is primarily the biggest water tank in the body, which is the skin.
Mhm.
So the skin is this water reservoir. It rips fluid from the skin and puts it into the blood and keeps the blood going as long as possible. So that means the skin is a dynamic system, but it's also a lead indicator. It's actually giving you a much better readout for hydration than what blood does. And so we identified that, but we also found that within the skin, there's just one location that's the most sensitive of them all, and that's just below the surface of the skin. It's called the viable epidermis. And that's great because you don't have to go very far with this microelectrode. It's just a hair's width end of the skin. So to cut a long story short, unlike a lot of things in life where blood draws are usually pretty good and you're trying to compare against them, here it's the flip, where already in our clinical trials, we've shown that our sensor, our micro wearable sensor, is outperforming gold standard blood draws for the dehydration states that we've been testing.
And how much of the work that you were doing with the nanopatch inform, let's say, the design and the way the WearOptimo device functions?
Yeah, but I think the way my brain works, it's, pardon the pun, it's quite fluid. So, um, so I've been pooling a body of knowledge over 27 years. So, as one example, step one as a biomedical engineer was when I was over at Oxford with a gene gun technology to fire microparticles into the skin with handheld rockets at 1,500 miles an hour. And so that's how I entered the field. My PhD was in rockets a long time ago. And so there was all the science associated with that. And then that led to me creating the needle-free vaccine delivery patch. And the stimulus for that was a call from Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for better vaccines for the developing world. So I used my knowledge to work that particular problem, and that led to the nano patch. And then down the line, with my body of knowledge as a founder of the field of microneedles, I could see suddenly around this time these guys or earlier versions of
Yeah.
Apple Watches were coming out, and I could immediately see there was again an amazing unmet need and opportunity for gaining access to the skin's signals. So I was just using what I know. So it was at that stage 18 years of knowledge that was being deployed.
Interesting. And so you were showing me just before we started the recording, the device itself. So maybe you'll be able to
Yeah.
share it again.
Of
And
course. Yeah,
it really looks like, yeah, it looks like a patch because you cannot see any needles on it, so it
that's
seems
right. So
basically you can
yeah,
see the array.
the thing about micro electrodes is they're micro. So yeah, you can't really see them, but you can see the form factor there. So
Yeah.
from this side, it looks very much like a CGM, continuous glucose monitor. What we're producing in this instance is a CHM, hydration, continuous hydration monitor. But of course, the big difference here is there's no needle
Hmm.
as at all, and our platform is deployable to many biomarkers beyond hydration. But hydration is a huge problem in its own right.
Exactly. And so what is the principle of the device, or let's say the mechanism by which you're able to measure hydration levels?
So how it works is, of course, the microelectrodes that we can't really see, but they reach into that layer of skin I was telling you about before, the viable
Hmm.
epidermis of the skin, and we do a bioimpedance sweep within the skin. So we pull out ultra high fidelity signals from the skin at different frequencies. And what we've done is we've been training algorithms, a key machine learning model.
Yeah.
So through our clinical trial, it learns hydration state for different types of signals and pulls out hyperparameters. So it learns what type of signal translates into what level of hydration. And what we've done is we've tested that against uh, a signal where it's never seen the person before and it's never seen, it doesn't know what the
Yeah.
level of hydration is. And we have an assessment where we're getting an ROC of 0.72. So that's a receiver operator characteristic. So that's a very good number, and it's much better than the blood draws, which is about 0.65.
Hmm. And is it then a continuous measure of the hydration level, or is it like measuring a certain threshold of you're hydrated, you're dehydrated, and just informing the user of the difference?
No, it's the level of hydration. So
Hmm.
a good way of thinking about what the product will be is like the experience with the readout for a continuous glucose monitor, where you can see your level as a function of time. We'll be doing the same kind of thing. A big difference is that we've needed to create our own digital biomarker for hydration.
Yeah, I was
Up
about to
until,
ask about the metric. Mm.
yeah, up until what we're doing, there was no way of directly monitoring hydration. There's attempts out there. There's parties that are trying to use sweat to monitor hydration. Sweat doesn't work because it's not correlated with your hydration level at all. As one example, you could be dry, not sweating at all, and dehydrated. But even when you are sweating, it's poorly correlated. And of course, people are trying to use light-based approaches to monitor hydration, but the skin's such an amazing barrier. Light-based approaches don't work. There's many issues associated with that. So uh, our assessment is that we have the only wearable on the planet that genuinely monitors hydration.
And to your point where you mentioned, hydration is not, let's say, evenly distributed across the body. Like,
Yep.
is the idea to just wear one of your device somewhere and have a local, let's say, measurement of hydration levels? Or, when I was looking at the device and when you made the comparison with CGM, also CGM for those who've never tried, like you usually wear it on like a shoulder or at the back of your
Yep.
arm and that's it. So it gives you the overall interpretation of your glucose levels based on one measurement site. Is
Yeah.
the idea for WearOptimo the same? So just wearing one device at one place, informing about your general
So,
hydration levels.
uh, yes, that is the idea. In our clinical studies, we had the sensors on multiple sites,
Yeah.
and we've not observed any discernible difference in site-to-site variability, which is great. So that opens up what I'm calling the traditional sites on offer for people to use. So those can include here, or can include the wrist. Uh, but we've even tested on just above the ankle
Mm.
as one example, the chest as another, thighs. So we have all of those possibilities on offer.
So I think that the challenge, with these wearables, and you referred, to the CGM device, where the measurement operates, in the interstitial fluid. What's always tricky is the ratio between the signal and the noise. And I could also imagine that when you have a device that sits on the skin like yours, there's also potentially, interferences when it comes to, sweat, to movement, to variations or individual variations in terms of, skin properties between people. So how is this, managed from your end?
Yeah, it's quite elegant. What we've done is we've worked with the strengths of the skin, if you like. So traditionally, when we think about wearables in the context of health and medicine, we're comparing against blood and how well blood works. And by and large, there's some downsides about working with the skin. You might have a lower concentration or a lag, things that are late. Skin's usually at what's called a lag indicator compared to what's happening in the body. Here, we've turned it around entirely where the skin's a lead indicator. So, because the skin is this water tank that rips fluid away so rapidly, so early, it gives us a rapid readout for hydration. And so, as a result of that, it's direct measurement of hydration with the ISF, where it's the interstitial fluid. The interstitial fluid is an asset here where we're not trying to back out and compare against what's happening in other parts of the body. It is the change of the interstitial fluid that you're actually directly measuring. And so by doing that, we're bypassing the other attempts that people are trying with hydration monitoring as well. So, as one example, a sweat measurement doesn't really work. A sweat's not correlated with hydration. We could be dry. I could be dehydrated right now. I'm not sweating. But even when I am sweating, dehydrate, it's not correlated with hydration. And light-based approaches like what's used in today's smartwatches, again, uh, it's limited by the skin's barrier function, how dark your skin is, movement artifacts. In contrast, our approach is not um, impeded by those things.
And how long can the device be worn? Because, having tried the CGM devices myself, I think it's limited to a measurement of 14 days. And that's probably related to the way the sensor works, which is a enzymatic reaction at the needle level.
Yep.
In your case, can it be worn for the same amount period of time? Can it be worn longer? Is there like a limit?
So conceptually, it can run longer than CGMs because there's no chemistry reaction
Yeah.
taking
Hmm.
place. We've not formally tested that at this point in time. clinical trials, we've tested, by and large, about 1 day of use. Uh, However, conceptually, we think the sensor could run out for perhaps a month or so, maybe 30 days.
Mhm.
And it's not the chemistry that's dictating that. It's actually the skin itself is changing over time. It starts sloughing off. So we think it could be as a result of that as opposed to anything else.
Mhm. And the use case would really be to wear it like, on a continuous basis. Like, I mean, obviously for going back to the parallel with CGM where you have diabetic patients who really need to have that information all the time. Do you think for, let's say, everyday life, or I mentioned applications in, in medicine, in everyday life, in sports, how do you think we should actually use the device?
I think it should be adaptive. That's how we're looking at it. So in day to day activity, when it's not exertion, it's not exercise, and you're going through a major medical event, by and large, your changes in hydration happen quite gradually. So what that means is you could be sampling, for argument's sake, every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes, whatever that is. But it's only when you start seeing more rapid changes in hydration, then that sensing rate can start increasing. So
Mhm.
every time for measurement. But conceptually, it can be continuous monitoring. It's what we've been doing in our clinical trials. Pulled out, we've been sampling every second, hundreds of data points from the sensor and pulling out about 1 billion data points from our clinical trial.
And how do you see, if we imagine ourselves like having the possibility to have that very detailed insight about our hydration level, and we're also, we have the possibility to measure other, biomarkers through, the smartwatches that you highlighted, or CGM with glucose, potentially also, sleep insights and so on. How do you see that additional like layer of information complementing or yeah, adding value to the rest of everything we can already measure?
I think it's going to be huge. Right now, all we have is simply putting it really simply, just two classes of things going on. Uh, we have we have smartwatches
Hmm.
and uh, heart rate, but those sorts of things, very very basic measurements. And then I have here a sample. We talked about it before of what a CGM looks like. Now, this is not WearOptimo's device; it's a commercial CGM, and you can see a massive needle there. Now, putting that to an aside, CGMs have changed people's lives. Uh, if you have type 1 diabetes, it's changed your life. So, compared to what existed before, it's fantastic. It's an amazing game changer. But the only way at the moment people have been getting access to real medical signals has primarily been putting a big needle into the body.
Hmm.
What we've come up with is a form factor that feels like a surface-based sensor with the microelectrodes, but has the upsides of the functionality that otherwise a CGM style device would have. So what that means is this micro electrode platform that we have with WearOptimo is deployable to a rich array of biomarkers like glucose, but also beyond. So we're talking about troponin for the detection of the early onset of a heart attack or inflammatory biomarkers. In both those cases, we have proof of concept data in that area. So uh, I think there's a really interesting inflection point taking place in the world of wearables because not only are they going to be far more powerful in a clinical setting for a whole bunch of different things beyond glucose, but also next gen will be minimally invasive for glucose as well. With
Hmm.
it. But in addition to that, the utility, it would be much broader as well, pushing more into a term that I don't really like because it sort of doesn't capture the thrust of it, but consumer application. So when we're wearing it to get real-time readouts that actually can change our behavior before we get sick.
Yeah. And I was thinking, so there's really like or in your vision, there's really like a possibility to have one platform to measure different types of biomarkers like at once or sequentially, because at the moment it's always, let's say, a focused like biomarker that's measured by one type of device, and so you have to wear different things on your body. I find that interesting because I've I don't know if I've had that sort of yeah, perspective before.
Well, that's right. So where it's all heading is, I'll give you an analogy. Do you remember? I'm reaching for another device now, something totally different. One of these things, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So before them, we all carried around a whole bunch of different devices. We had an MP3 player. We
Yeah.
had something else for this, some, and so we had all these different things, and then it got all put together and shrunk down to one platform. And there's sort of a couple of tribes now. There's the Apple thing, and then there's everyone else. Uh, but it's simplified down. And what I see over time isn't a situation. I don't think people want to wear a multitude of wearables. What they do want is something that's integrated, that can be multimodal,
Yeah.
right? From the same sensor. I think that's the convergence point that we'll be working towards. Certainly, our platform has the capability conceptually to do that. We've not tested for that right now, but over the horizon, that's where it's going. And then the next part of that is not just sensing, but releasing the therapeutic in real time. So I think that will be very, very, very powerful.
Hmm. And so, what are the next steps for you as a company? So you mentioned there are some clinical trials ongoing. I think on the website I saw that there was an intent to have the device marketed maybe from a consumer perspective in 2026. Can you give us a bit of yeah, of an idea of what's on the horizon for the coming years?
So yes, we've completed the clinical trial to demonstrate that the technology works. We also have a manufacturing system that's up and running here in Brisbane that allows us to make 30 million of our sensors at a unit cost of just a handful of cents per sensor. So that's really important as well. So there's the design for manufacture, and it's been clinically proven. So what's in front of us right now is the product development to shrink it all down to the product form function. And where we're beginning is we're beginning with elite athletes because we get ultra high changes
Yeah.
through. Think of the elite athlete as a Formula One engine of health, right? So we're getting big swings, big signals. So for a given individual, the training for the algorithm is much greater. They send themselves through much greater ranges of
Yeah. Yeah.
hydration. So dynamic signals. So that's where the journey begins. But then we move into volume markets such as the mining sector as well as military, and then into health, uh, into the clinical markets. But something very important to say is that those very first pathways I was telling you about do not require regulatory approval.
Yeah.
So that means we have a rapid pathway to getting
Yeah.
our sensor out there for people to use it.
Yeah, for sure. And also generating, I think it's like generating revenue to fund potentially also the
That's
whole
right.
certification process. I've seen this like in other companies. I think it makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned, that the first target group would be, elite athletes, and you mentioned F1, so Formula One. And I've noticed like, many that you're working with a local former F1 expert who is Mark Webber. I think he joined the company, as an investor and as a strategic partner. I wanted to ask you, as a F1 enthusiast, and at the time where Mark was racing, I was more into Formula One, so to say. I was in my teenage years. How is it to work with him, and what insights does he bring, to the company as, that former elite athlete in a discipline where it's known, I think they always say, the drivers lose like, multiple kilos of water over the time of a race. So I understand it's very relevant for that discipline.
Oh, it is. So Mark Webber, he's obviously you know him well as a Formula One enthusiast. So he he has a lot of professional experiences with hydration that he talks openly about. As one example, he had an accident at Monaco where his car hit the wall at high speed, and in the post analysis, they found that he was dehydrated, and that affected his brain function.
Mhm.
So one of the ways hydration impacts us is that when we're dehydrated only by 3%, as an example, it has the same effect on the way the brain works as being uh, effectively drunk with alcohol. It's over the blood alcohol limit. So that's quite significant in those settings. So Mark Webber identified that. So we came to know each other. So he came on as an investor and then also as a strategic partner. And as a strategic partner, he's advising us on general needs for hydration, but also for elite athletes in particular and motorsports. But he works in endurance sports in many domains. And working with him is very interesting because uh, you're gaining uh, an insight into how elite athletes look at things and how they carry, how the truly elite athletes, highest level, go about things. So I find that very very interesting. His perspective on how he approaches things. It's very very interesting, and of course he's active now in a different way. In the sense, of course, physically he's active still. He's a very fit individual, but uh, in his capacity as Oscar Piastri's manager and was about there at McLaren. So there's that potential channel there. Probably just one other thing I'll say is uh, what we do at WearOptimo is it's kind of like an extreme sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're doing something that's never been done before. We're taking things to the limits, and so if you want to be in an extreme sport, you need to be an extreme athlete. So
Mhm.
in our technical way, in our world, that's what we are. So we see quite a lot of similarities. Obviously, not as accomplished as Mark Webber, um, but when I look at some scientists I've worked with over the years as well, the very very high flying ones, more similarities than differences is what I'd say. So, as just one example, on our advisory board at WearOptimo is Professor Bob
Yeah.
Langer.
From the MIT. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and for those not in the world of MIT, etc., won't be familiar with him, but I think people have heard of the Moderna
Yeah.
vaccine, and
Mm.
he was the co-founder of that company, and many others. He's considered one of the probably the most successful engineer there's ever been. So, uh, working with him directly, again, it's very similar. The ego is not really there. We play what's in front of us rather than we're not worried about what we think in
Mhm.
terms of how our feelings, if that makes sense. So we're just playing the problem or whatever the situation is, and I really find that uh, inspiring.
Yeah, it must be super inspiring and motivating to be surrounded by such people. Mark, I wanted to ask you as well, like, have working, closely on in that space of, hydration measurement, like, how do you, what do you do to stay hydrated? Like, how do you have like practical tips for listeners? Like, do you wear the device yourself? Because that's always the problem. Like, I was referring to these apps at the beginning where they just tell you drink, X time, and it's hard to actually know when you're hydrated, overhydrated, or dehydrated. And so I thought if you can leave us with some practical tips, that would be helpful.
Well, of course, I'd love to say wait for our sensor to be on the market, but it'll be a little while. I think get it into your thinking is how I'd approach it. I admire the way, as one example, the Austrians drink coffee. So
Hmm.
when they're there in Vienna, they have their coffee served, but they also have water served
Yeah.
uh, with them as well. And so make that just part of your habit that uh, you're when you get up in the morning, it's a good idea to have a glass of water just to get started, because you've been slowly dehydrating through the night. Uh, don't I mean, when people say, when you're thirsty, it's too late, they are right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the thirst sensation only really kicks in when you're massively dehydrated.
Yeah.
It's make it part of your have. I think it's about social behavior. Make it part of your social behavior.
Perfect. So there's always a couple of recurring questions I ask at the end of, every episode. The first one would be, around the resources you would recommend us, for us to learn more about the field in which you work. So it can be, books, publications, websites, anything that, you would recommend to our listeners.
Good. So I'd recommend a paper that was published not by us but another group by Dimitrova, and I'll provide the information. But
Sure.
it was in Nature Reviews Nephrology in 2024, and it really gets across the scale of the hydration problem. When I referred to before, about half of society, so it's half of Americans are chronically and mildly dehydrated, and if it was a zone disease, hydration would be up there with diabetes
Hmm.
if it was
Hmm.
classified as a disease. So I think that's a very if you only read one paper on the scale of the problem of hydration, I'd read that one. And in addition to that, with our works being worked up for publication, unlike my academic career in the past where I was putting out publications left, right, and center, it's a different game now. So we're patented well, that's for sure. But because it's a commercial thing as well, our publication's following a different pathway, so it'll be coming out soon. But we're not published on that just yet.
All right. Yeah. So then I'll put the links in the show notes. Can you share with us an anecdote from your work at WearOptimo that made you realize the impact that you were having on people's lives, maybe through the trials of or some other stories?
So there's a few. I think if I go back to the formation of WearOptimo, how it started. So uh, it sort of there's a couple of things that took place. One is I was doing a sabbatical over at Boston, Harvard, MIT with Bob Langer back in 2015, and so around that time, the earlier versions of these
Yeah.
came
Hmm.
and I could immediately see their limitations. And with my knowledge of the skin, the need for next generation wearables, so I could see that. And then not long after that, when I was back in Australia, one of my close relatives, an elderly individual, had a heart attack. And I remember going to hospital and being the first family member there. And I was astonished by the complete lack of useful information that was there. They needed to take a blood draw and they needed to wait 6 hours for the results to come back. By then, the body's already moved on, and there's so many, I just could not believe the level of gaps there, and that really uh, hurried me along to think, okay, we need to come up with some better ways to address
Hmm.
this. It's just unacceptable. So that was an important stimulus in what we're doing with the formation of the business. And I think aside from that, within the business itself, what really excites me is I've been fortunate to work with amazing people that have mentored me over the years and learning their art, and I've been forming my own way of going about things. And so I've brought in younger uh,
Hmm.
staff members, engineers, scientists, etc., and giving them that knowledge. So what we call innovation apprenticeships, and that excites me a lot because not only, of course, will Optimo succeed at Wilt, but we're training the next generation on how to do
Hmm.
this as well. So they'll go out and uh, be brave enough to form their own companies to tackle some of these big problems, and I think that's really important.
Thanks for sharing that. If you would recommend a fellow healthcare innovator as a potential guest for the podcast, who would that be, and why would you recommend her or him?
Well, I did talk about Bob before. I think
Yeah.
Bob Langer would be amazing for you to talk to. I think if you love Formula One, as you do, I'm also on my advisory board is Luke Bennett, and
Yeah, he
Luke.
was with Peter Attia, right?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but Luke was effectively the medical doctor for 16 of the 20 Formula One drivers. So they don't have the title of chief medical doctor in Formula One, but he was effectively it. So
Yeah.
I think you really enjoy conversations with Luke as well. There are two that come to mind. Others that I've had the privilege to work with. I'd say the creators of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine for the pandemic.
Yeah.
So Adrian Smith and Sarah. I had the privilege of working with them when I was over at Oxford. And here in Brisbane, Australia, I had the privilege and still continue to work with all these people. But here in Brisbane, Professor Ian Fraser, the inventor of the HPV vaccine,
Mm.
so
Cervical
he
cancer.
has a really interesting journey and story as well.
Really nice. Yeah. So I'll I'll try to reach out to those and see if they
Happy
would
to put
cover
you in
all
touch.
this. Yeah. Thank you so much. Then no, thank you so much, Mark. I think it was really, really interesting. I was really happy that we could, explore this world of, hydration, wearable, and how it works, what it would mean, and what it might also change, for us once this hits the market and it's available. And I wish you, a lot of success in that regard.
Thank you.
Um, so yeah, thank you so much.
And I have a question, if that's okay.
Mhm.
Did anything surprise you from this conversation?
I think what surprised me the most was this idea of having, one platform for sensing different biomarkers. Because what I've seen in my work, um, most of the devices are always quite specific for one type, be it, regardless of the sensing method, be if it's like optical or chemical or something else. And so to me, that's one of the biggest takeaways, I would say, as a concept. And I hope it works out, because I think it's also from a user experience perspective, it's probably easier to just wear one thing and be able to sense different things than have one sensor here, one sensor here, have a wristband, have like a, I don't know, a blood pressure measurement sensor here. Yeah.
That's right. And so there's that wearability issue. And tied in with that is most people just don't like needles as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So yeah, getting past that in combination with those things, I think, yeah, it's a pretty exciting time. Uh, I just, uh, I just wish we were out on the market already.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, but I think also from a trend perspective, when there's more and more focus on like longevity and so on, and I think people are more and more conscious about, tracking health metrics and so on. So I think there's definitely a demand, for, and hydration. I think there's probably also going to be this sort of recognition that, oh, we actually have no easy ways as individuals to measure it. If we could measure it like this, I think this would change a lot of things. And because for now, you're just relying on your own impressions of how your body feels. And it's hard to, leverage some clear insights about your current hydration status.
Good. Yeah, I think you summarized that well. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for watching the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. You can subscribe by clicking on the podcast channel at the top right and watch another episode here at the bottom.